There is a popular meme in academic circles and online debates that the United States is basically Rome reborn. A well-known creator recently released a long video pushing that idea. He mixes some solid comparisons with arguments that weaken once you look closer. So let us examine both his version of the claim and the broader idea that America is reliving a Roman script. My basic position is up front. America is indeed the dominant power of its age, influential the way Rome once was, and comparing cultures across time is genuinely fun. But what the video attempts is more than comparison. It tries to show that civilizations follow fixed cycles and that the United States is locked into Rome's path. That is where the argument breaks down. Welcome to Political Plot, where we cut through the noise to reveal the power plays shaping American politics. Today we're diving into the popular idea that America is the modern Rome and examining why surface-level parallels can be fascinating, but ultimately fall apart once you confront the historical complexity behind them. It's a breakdown of how cyclical theories oversimplify the past and why real lessons come not from destiny, but from understanding how institutions rise, adapt, and fail. Oswald Spengler, a German thinker who pictured civilizations as organisms with predictable lifespans. Today, he is not considered reliable because his theories rely more on metaphysical imagery than data. He imagined societies rising, blooming, decaying, then producing Caesars. That poetic model is appealing, but not historically sound. Civilizations rarely follow a single arc. They merge, transform, or morph into successors. Rome did not collapse into nothing. It evolved into medieval Europe, which continued calling itself Roman for centuries. History rarely cycles, it flows. Western civilization began around 700, reached philosophical maturity around 1700, and entered imperial turbulence 300 years later. This timeline is arbitrary. Western culture did not appear out of nowhere in the early Middle Ages. Medieval Europe saw itself as the heir of Rome and inherited its religious, legal, and philosophical foundation. If you acknowledge continuity, the neat start date dissolves and the purported civilizational cycle becomes impossible to frame. Invasions produce heroic ages, and that Greece's Bronze Age collapse resembles Europe after Viking raids. This oversimplifies. Vikings did not destroy the Frankish kingdom. Mycenaean decline is still debated. The supposed heroic cycles appear only when you shave off complexities. Nearly every culture creates stories about legendary figures. That does not mean they share an identical structural phase. There are equivalences between ancient and medieval groups. Christianity is mapped onto Greek myth, Protestants onto mystery cults, and European colonies onto Greek settlements. These parallels sound clever, but fall apart when details enter the picture. Ancient Greek religion functioned through syncretism, while medieval Christianity operated through exclusivity. The Reformation was a doctrinal break within monotheism, not the rebirth of esoteric salvation cults. And medieval Europeans did not share the civic identity of classical Greek city-states. If you loosen the rules, you can draw almost any set of parallels. You could map the 13 colonies to Athens resisting Persia, or compare America to ancient Israel. The ability to generate endless parallels shows how weak cyclical theory is. Civilizations shift from creative culture to rigid civilization, but societies rarely freeze. Philosophical debate continues today. India, China, and the Islamic world experienced major changes long before colonialism. Spengler tries to exclude these as inauthentic because they involve outside influence, but all societies exchange ideas. Rome absorbed Greek thought. America blends dozens of traditions. Civilizations behave like networks, not organisms with predetermined destinies. The idea that rural or nomadic people possess vigor while urban elites decay is another romantic invention. Even nomadic societies develop sophisticated moral and political systems, and creative thought does not disappear in cities. The West is driven by boundless striving, while classical culture was obsessed with proportion. Yet classical Greece pursued conquest and experimentation, while the West has long championed symmetry and perfection in art. These archetypes create atmospheric descriptions, not historical facts. Where the comparison gets stronger is with America's Republican institutions. The United States deliberately borrowed from Rome. The Senate, the suspicion of monarchy, the emphasis on civic virtue, these were conscious imitations, and both societies absorbed diverse peoples into a shared political identity. But it is one thing to note influence and another to claim identical trajectories. Early America was extremely religious and conservative like early Rome. That is partly true, but incomplete. Many early Americans were devoted Protestants, yet deists and skeptics had significant influence too. Early America was culturally varied even within the colonies. The analogy to Rome works only on the surface. When we compare Washington to Cincinnatus and praise both societies for rotating their elites, there is insight there, although comparing elite structures across such different economies is difficult. America for treating subject peoples better than Rome. It is true that America rebuilt Germany and Japan rather than raising them, but the United States also carried out destructive campaigns against indigenous peoples, intervened aggressively in Latin America, and waged wars that devastated civilians abroad. The difference from Rome is one of degree, not absolute moral opposition. When it came to the Punic Wars and the World Wars, these parallels look tidy only when stripped of context. Rome and Carthage battled over regional dominance, while the World Wars involved industrial alliances and ideological conflict. If one tried, one could map Russia as Rome and Germany as Carthage and still make the timeline fit. That flexibility shows the analogy's weakness. Rome entered a golden age after victory, then decayed morally, becoming sexually permissive and socially unstable. That narrative mostly comes from Roman writers who used moral decline as a political trope. Rome's behavior did not suddenly shift with conquest. Same-sex relations, divorce, and excess existed earlier. The real issue was institutional decay and concentration of power, not private behavior. A more grounded parallel is widening inequality. Rome's small farmers were squeezed out by large estates and cheap slave labor. Today, America sees productivity gains flowing upward while wages stagnate. This fuels resentment and political turbulence. Trump the role of a modern Gracchus, but the comparison does not hold. The Gracchi sought aggressive redistribution. Trump did not pursue similar reforms. Slave revolts become imagined machine uprisings. Italian allies resemble hypothetical American separatists. Barbarian invasions turn into vague future conflicts. These scenarios reveal the limits of forcing history into a predetermined mold. What America should learn from Rome. Some points are reasonable. Societies must value labor. A hollowed middle class destabilizes politics. Safeguarding liberal norms like free expression matters for preventing authoritarian drift. Respecting civilian control of the military is essential, especially as public trust in civilian institutions declines. But moralizing about sexual behavior as a cause of Rome's decline misses the point. Rome fell into autocracy because power concentrated in the hands of military leaders and institutions failed. The better lesson is that republics survive only if they maintain strong institutions, economic fairness, and limits on executive power. We should not assume America is fated to repeat Rome. Cycles are not real predictors. History echoes, but does not lock us into reenactments. We can still choose how our story unfolds.